Good evening. This is the November 15 meeting of the Harbor Management Commission. I'm Kim Taylor. I'm in the first floor conference room of Sullivan Independence Hall with Don Hyman, the Harbor Master Brian LeClaire, Jack Herschler, Jeff Warren, Bill Perezzini, Betty Gabriel, Jeff Stedman, and two members of the public, Devin Santa, and our mooring maintenance contractor, Jeff Engborg. On the line, I have Sam Cargill, Eric Sunman, Doug Metchik, and several members of the public. And let's call this meeting to order and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Great, everyone. Welcome to a cold and yucky Tuesday night. We have an interesting meeting ahead of us. The first item on our agenda is to approve the September and October minutes. So to start with the September minutes, did anyone have any suggestions or comments? If not, can I have a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Jack moved. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Bill second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. October minutes. Anyone have any suggestions, corrections? If not, could I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Don moves.
And I'll second.
Bill seconds. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
I had to recuse myself. I wasn't here, so I can't vote.
Thank you, Jack. Is anybody, can you guys on the phone hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we're muted.
Good. Just checking. Want you to be present and want to hear from you.
I also wasn't at that meeting,
So we can't vote.
so,
Oh, we need, back to the October minutes.
sorry.
Someone who was present at the October meeting. Could I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I can make the motion. I seconded the first one.
Okay, Bill moved. Can I have a seconder from Sam or Eric?
I'll second it. Eric?
Thanks, Eric. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Great. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. Moving right along, the chairman's report. On October 27, the harbor master and Jeff and I had a very interesting meeting with Coral Salgado of the Army Corps of Engineers, the project manager, Todd Randall and Matthew Moroska, both of the Army Corps' environmental group. We were there at their request to discuss kind of the scope, the timing, the status of the project, of the dredging project, and we'll get into more detail further on in the agenda where we talk about sand management. On November 6 and 7, I had exchanged a couple of emails with Gail Robinson, who is president of the Ash Creek Conservation Association. She's expressed concern about responsibility for dock approvals in Ash Creek, and I'm not sure if any of you remember, but had to have been at least a year ago, we received notice that a house on Bay Edge Court was building a dock, and the copies of the materials that were submitted to DEEP were also submitted to us, and of course that's outside of our jurisdiction, so someone in the town, I suppose, was going to be in touch if they had any comment. Nonetheless, or what is perceived by the Ash Creek Conservation Association, a huge dock was built right in the middle of some environmentally sensitive areas, and the concern that the Ash Creek Conservation Association has is that I guess there's a DEEP process that allows people to wharf out without with a kind of an express process. Devin, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but if they submit the paperwork, the property owner submits the paperwork, then the deep sort of, not automatically, but approves it. And
that is true. It's pretty limited in what it approves. It's called a 440 process.
Right.
Where the dock can't go into any water deeper than 4 feet, can't extend any further than 40 feet from mean high water, and also can't cross wetlands.
Okay.
Wetlands were usually the thing that made it a non-starter. So
Okay.
I think that if it was an environmentally sensitive area, that would have wetlands and maybe not appropriate for a 440.
Well, I believe it was a 440 dock that was built over there on the Bay Edge Court address, and that's where the town oyster nursery, if you will,
Yeah.
is located. And the state of Connecticut has just recently acknowledged an oyster preservation plan and has spent a great deal of time over in Ash Creek with all sorts of state officials, deep officials, praising the efforts that the Shellfish Commission has made to start and raise the baby oysters over there. And I think it was the oyster habitat,
Okay.
I think, that caused all the concern. I know the Shellfish Commission was concerned when they learned that dock had gone up. In any event, I explained that I think the confusion, the reason why the Ash Creek Conservation Association was contacting us is because the harbor master's jurisdiction covers all of the waters in Fairfield, not just Southport. And she had assumed that because the harbor master his jurisdiction was no longer limited to Southport Harbor, that therefore our jurisdiction extended all the way around to Ash Creek. And I explained to her that that was not the case, and they may or may not come visit us at some point to chat about what's going on in Ash Creek and what some of their concerns are. And then finally, on November 8th, I received an email from Coral Salgado again, forwarding on the fact sheets describing the two dredging, the special purpose dredges, and the size, the shapes, etc. And the reason that I received that was at our meeting on October 27th, the harbor master had asked her for some of the specifics about the dredges and whether or not and how and where in the harbor the dredges could be moored and what kind of space they would take up, et cetera, et cetera. So that was her response to the harbor master's question, and he will, in his report, I'm sure, describe more about what his conversation and questions to Coral were. So in any event, that concludes my report. Are there any questions? Jeff?
On the issue in Ash Creek, the Shellfish Commission has jurisdiction
Correct.
on the Fairfield side. And so if there was a permit application on the Fairfield side, the Shellfish Commission would be notified of it with a pre-application, just as we are.
Okay.
Even with the 440 or certificate of permission, the Shellfish Commission isn't automatically notified of that. But if this commission is notified, we could refer that notification to the Shellfish Commission. So it might be, that's in the town of Fairfield. Maybe we should just have it as a policy or talk to Deep about it. Harbor Commission is supposed to be notified. We could pass the notifications on to the Shellfish Commission.
Right, and I believe that we were not the only ones noticed on those, on that notice, that the town was also, it didn't just come to.
So there should be some, so that it doesn't slip, the
Right.
Shellfish Commission is aware of
Right.
what's being proposed.
Right, and I believe it came at a time when the Conservation Commission was headless, if you will, and so I'm sure, whether it fell through
I
the.
had forwarded that.
You had forwarded on?
I believe so.
Okay, so it was forwarded on, and for whatever reason, the town.
Court or Bay.
Bay Edge Court.
Bay Edge.
Yeah. For whatever reason, the town did not get involved, or maybe they did and it didn't have their involvement had no impact. I really don't know because it was outside our jurisdiction. So, in any event, any other questions? thoughts, comments? Okay, Mr. Harbor Master.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. For my report, I'll start with where the chairman left off. We did have a meeting with the Army Corps, and I raised some questions for them as to when they were going to start, because we've always been talking about the fall of next year, 2023. So I asked, the pointed question, because I need to make sure there's room for these vessels to come in. And I said, if you're going to block off the entire harbor for any portion of time, whether it's hours, days, or a week, I need to know, because we have traffic.
Some of them have worked out okay, but some of them didn't work out at all and really had to.
Hello?
Be the AE, so.
Who's speaking now?
I'm sorry, that was Sam Cargill. I dropped for a minute. I'm on another call, sorry.
Okay.
So, it's my question, if you're going to be blocking access to the harbor at any time, we need to know that. We have vessels coming in and out, and I wanted to confirm that you're starting in October of next year. At that point, we realized they're not starting in October of next year, first of all. It looks like more January, February of the following year. And they indicated it's not like you get on a list and we schedule this thing, you would in a business, have a very precise list. It's a little looser than that. We also discussed, I'd been taking some soundings following some question as to how deep the channel was at certain points of the low tide and how wide it was. And they questioned, did we want to try to do everything at once, both the area by the lower wharf as well as the channel all the way out. The problem with that is that's going to take years. If we stop this process now and try to add on to it, we're adding years, at least 2 to 3 years. And we got to be careful. We can't do it now. We may lose the access to by the lower wharf if we're not careful for vessels. So, my recommendation was at that meeting, no, let's just keep going because we're almost there. Next, we do the channel. We'll put that in line for the rest of the channel. Start that dredging process. So we did have that discussion. They gave me some information about the boat. I talked to Travis at the club about it briefly. We can accommodate. If the boats are out of the harbor, whether we have to drop moorings for them or use a helix or something, there's a way we can come up with a way to put their boat there. If they need fuel, they can make arrangements with Pequot that there's enough fuel on, in the tanks over the winter to provide them the diesel or the gas they want to purchase for the vessel. So that can all work out. Again, as to, I was at a seminar a little over a week ago with Online Mooring. They had an all-day seminar about their software with, a little over 100 people on the line, different harbor masters listening to them. And I realized a couple of things. One is the software is very tailored to the different communities once you sign up for it. And number two is they used us for an example. We have a rather advanced, I think, version of it with lots going on. So they used us a few times looking at our software online on the Zoom seminar. I felt good about it afterwards because, I think everything I've been making notes all years. Every time I do something once, I make detailed notes how we can do it again or anyone can do it again and not get caught up. And they covered everything we talked about, so that was a good seminar. We're all set to go. I checked. The emails will go out on New Year's Eve or first thing New Year's Day, telling people that it's time to renew their moorings again. We should be fine. I'm coordinating with them the location of data so things don't go into storage, like the safe boating certificates will always live live in your individual files, so you don't have to upload them again, and any of us can find them again. I can find them right away if I need them. Same with registrations that are still in effect and insurance that doesn't expire. Because insurance, as you know, is a floating expiration date throughout the year. It's not a static point in time. We have one request, coincidentally, today for a larger vessel by someone who's in a mooring. So I told him I can't necessarily going from a mid-sized powerboat to a 49-foot sailboat will not fit where he wants it. So we have to wait and see what happens as vessels don't renew and whether we can accommodate. And if you look at the harbor today, it's empty except for a few moorings. Pequot started pulling them a week plus ago from the North Anchorage as boats were leaving. As of this morning, and today was the deadline I gave everyone, November 15th, the vessels are all off the moorings. So kind of sad because we had such a great season and a long season given the weather this year. Your harbor was busy right up, I pulled my boat a little over a week ago, and there were kayakers and paddle boarders with the 70-plus degree weather we had right through November. It was wonderful seeing that every weekend, folks out, and the fishermen. So it was nice, but everyone did get out in time, so it's all good. Pequot is pulling, as you know, this is a helix inspection year. So while everything, the chains are sunk down from the north and the south anchorage, the diver will be going in and inspecting the helix. Next year. It's the non-north mooring, the wall moorings and everything else, south moorings that will be inspected. And we'll look at the mooring balls over the winter at some point to check them out as well. So that's basically my report. If there are any questions, I can answer them otherwise.
Questions?
Yeah.
Don?
I wanted to raise a kind of very related discussion opportunity for the commission. Brian has given this very helpful status report on where we are with dredging, and those of us around the table are leaning in and listening. I think you'll recognize that, of course, dredging in our harbor is a major topic of public interest, frustration, concern, bad jokes, all the above and more. And I sent around an article that I saw last month in the Connecticut Post. I sent it around this morning. Have you seen that article? You know what I'm talking about? This is the article. And Westport, which is they have the same kind of objective as us, but they're in a very different place, and they have a different harbor than we do. And they don't have all their T's crossed or I's dotted either on their dredging project, but they put together a media relations effort with the Connecticut Post that quoted the first select woman in Westport to kind of give the same kind of report you're doing relative to their situation. It's my understanding that we on the commission are looking for opportunities to tell our story, to become better known, to not be kind of untransparent in where we are. And I think we're at that kind of a moment now. It would be very possible to put together a news release that we could provide to news media and others that gave some kind of a status report on what we've done, what's been done, what's yet to be done, what the timetable might be for dredging the harbor. This is, as I said earlier, a topic of keen interest to most or all boaters. So that's my point. I just wanted to throw out for discussion. I could write such a report, such a news release. I could draft something for everybody's review before issuing it, if there was support for that.
Thoughts, commissioners?
Yes. The article that you circulated made it pretty clear that they have not done some of the work that we've done in terms of preparation. So right. I don't know if they didn't understand what's in front of them or if they did and decided to move forward with this communication. So I guess the question for us is, given where we know we are right now in this process, is right now the right point to be doing that communication, or are there any other milestones that we might want to think about having occur first before we ask the first select woman to put her neck out there to take a position like that?
I think Jack is right. It's premature now, and the best time, in my opinion, would be when the Corps of Engineers finishes its plan and submits it to DEEP for approval. Because we don't know there could be some other unforeseen obstacles that we have to deal with in the next few months. And the article about the Saugatuck River was quite interesting because it talks about the expectation to dredge it in the spring of next year, which is, well, they don't know that they understand the process. But I think we still have to work out some things about the mitigation of the piping plover habitat. And the Corps, when we talk with them, they're close to, I think, to finishing the actual plan that would be submitted to DEEP for approval. Then that's when I think that we would want to have the support, because we want DEEP to approve it in a timely way.
Can I respond? I think one thing I noticed in rereading this article is that indeed Westport doesn't have all of its T's crossed or I's dotted in this effort, but that didn't stop them from communicating. And the major message is took both initiatives or took a step forward, not finalized it, not locked up the timetable, but took a step forward. And they talk about the various issues that they're facing, which are in some cases similar to our own. They have yet to be. There was something that's the understatement of the year, something about.
Well, they didn't know what they were going to be doing with the dredged material.
Yeah, we have to understand what we're doing with sand management. So my only point would be, yes, we could wait until another report is filed with DEP. Yes, you would have more information there. But you could also do both. You could be out there now communicating where we are transparently, candidly, and just kind of making sure that the parties that are involved know that we are communicating. And whether it's the first select woman who leads that process or the two of you, we can discuss that. And then when we have more traction, more closure, do it again. You don't have to, you have more times at bat here. And we have a commission that, by many accounts, is underappreciated and under-recognized in town. This is one of our strongest stories.
Jeff?
Well, again, I'm just thinking a lot, but I would also discuss it with the Corps of Engineers to see what might be most helpful to them, or that we're not doing anything that would put, I don't want to say added pressure on them, but I would want them to also know what we're intending to do before we do it, and see if they see any downsides.
Let's talk about the idea of added pressure. I come from a profession where the old cliche, the squeaky wheel gets the oil, is often used. We're kind of a squeaky wheel in this situation. I think it might be a good idea to talk to the Army and the others that are involved in this, but I don't know that I would ask them for their okay on this. I would tell them, this is what we plan to do. Would you like to participate? I think there's an opportunity to add some polite pressure to their side of the equation. Westport had quotes and participation from the Washington delegation, from Blumenthal and Himes. They did a survey of their harbor. It was a photo opportunity. It was just perfunctory, but it gets attention. I think the question is, not only do we want to take this opportunity to be more transparent and communicate where we are and where we're not, do we also want to consider leveraging this situation with the people that are involved and knowing that, we're not just a quiet bunch of commissioners here, that we have obligations to communicate with the public.
Jeff, you said yes. What are you thinking?
I kind of agree with everything that Don's saying.
Okay.
I guess my thought is, I don't disagree that we should be promoting this. I guess the question is just one of timing. I think we can prepare our communication with the expectation that the DEEP proposal from the Army Corps is going to be happening. And if we have no control of the timing of the Army Corps' application to DEEP, but we can control our communications, and we can decide at some point if the speed that the Army Corps is proceeding is too slow and we want to get ahead of that and use this as leverage, we'll have that decision to make. But we could start writing this with an assumption that there is going to be an application from DEEP and that we coincide with that updated action that occurs in this approval process. But if it turns out that the Army Corps is taking longer than we like, we can go with this other strategy if we have to do that. Because
Seems like-
the contents could be basically the same, right, of the message.
Right, I think
One
that's-
is there was an application, or
Yeah.
there wasn't an application, it's the next step.
That seems like a reasonable compromise. What is the greater good? To keep our public well-informed on where we are, or to not raise eyebrows with a group of people that are not exactly proceeding with all due speed?
Well, you're right. I mean, we certainly thought until our meeting 3 weeks ago, that we were going to be looking at a Currituck in next fall. And they made it very clear to us at the meeting that it would be the winter, not the fall. And that would be kind of, if we're lucky.
That was a little bit of a surprise what we
Yeah.
were told. That's why I
Yeah.
asked, because if I needed to have the boats out early or certain boats, space made for the dredge, I'd have to move certain moorings around early in the fall.
Again, another reason is managing expectations. If we have nothing out there, if there's just one big, we don't know,
Yeah.
how are we serving ourselves and the public?
Yeah, I think we should plan to do some kind of communication sometime this winter before folks go into the voting season next year. The question is really about the pace that the Army Corps is going to go.
And I would just say that the obstacle to this project over the last 20 years has not been the Corps of Engineers, it's been the DEP. So I think that we should expect that when the Corps, I don't expect, but it's reasonable to expect that there are going to be objections from DEP when the project is submitted. That they're going to have to do with our approach to mitigating the piping plover habitat, mitigating the impact on the grasses on the top, and the use of the dredge material. Because DEP has emphasized and told us that they would like to have the dredge material used for beach nourishment. This whole project is designed based on that the material would be placed in the nearshore area for enhancing shellfish habitat. And so we have support from the Bureau of Aquaculture to do that. I'm just saying all along, when we've had the obstacles to dredging the harbor have come from the state of Connecticut, not from the Corps of Engineers. The pressure the Corps has, and it feels it itself, is that they have the money allocated by Congress to do this. So they have to show progress that they're moving this forward. But
I think we can write it, though. I think we can lay out the facts of where we are. We'll have an update sometime this winter on what's going on.
And for the first time in 20 years, we have a plan to do something with a sandbar. And that will be the Corps' plan, and that's what we want to promote and have the political support behind that plan. Right, and to try to influence DEEP to approve it.
Yeah, so we can use these problems, right? These problems, these kind of areas of disagreement or disconnection or whatever they are, that's not unusual in any large, project to have, do we go this way or do we go that way? I mean, that's typical. Use them, they're interesting, they're important, that's public record. If we wait for everything to be tied up with a red bow, we're going to have a lot of people wondering what the hell we're doing. Right.
Commissioners on the phone, do we have any comments, thoughts? Doug, Sam, Eric?
Yeah, I guess it's a good idea, to get it started. Sure. Yeah.
Well, I might propose that I could, sit or be online or something like that with Brian, Jeff, and Kim. And I don't want to write copy at this meeting, but I do want to have another session where I can take good notes and get it correct and come up with a draft.
Kim and I can pull our notes from that phone call and kind of
Yeah.
give a timeline of who said what and what the Corps said about the shellfish and the things they talked about.
I think so.
I think in the absence of any information, what the public may be asking is, what are you guys doing wrong that the dredging center? So
Good point.
I think a vacuum is not a good thing to have.
Right, I agree.
Good point.
Yes, agree.
Good point.
Jeff, do you have, if you were guessing, do you have a sense of what the likely timing would be from the Corps' perspective to do this application to DEEP?
I don't have anything more than what they told us. They still have to put the plan together and submit it to DEEP for review and approval. And then there's a public comment period, and there's gonna be a negotiation with DEEP, because I just can't imagine they're gonna say, this is great.
Yeah, I think we were thinking though, is when they submit it, that's a milestone.
Right.
It's just been submitted, and then we can
Right.
do stuff, here's where we're at.
It's somewhat of an odd call in my perspective.
What's that?
She had two gentlemen on. Coral had two gentlemen on from the Corps as well.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's very casual, their approach to this, that it's, yeah, we know we got a dredge and we have the money, and it's just not what I expected. I expected more aggressive, more concrete, you know, sticks in the sand as we're going along here, but that's not how they operate. It's very, we'll get to it when we get to it, and
No sense, you know, we'd like a little more sense of urgency, I think.
Yeah. so
Well, we feel that urgency.
Yeah.
And
So
it's
from a
not
communication
reciprocated.
standpoint, I guess my feeling is we shouldn't let no communication happen before the next boating season. We should provide the community with an update. And so the question is just whether we get to that milestone this winter, or it doesn't happen and we have to go with the original idea, which is just do some projects.
Why don't we ask Coral when she's applying? Let's just, you know, maybe you can ask point blank, when do you expect the
That's a good idea.
application to be done with DEEP? And if she says spring, well, you know, or summer, that's a problem.
Right.
But
It would also be good, I think, to get the Shellfish Commission as part of this too, because part of the benefit of this project is a project that the Shellfish Commission supports, and so once we have that in order, I think that bring the Shellfish Commission into it as well.
The golf course.
Well, we're talking, I don't know about the golf course, but we're talking now about the dredge material offshore to enhance shellfish habitat.
they thought that would be helpful in their dealing with the DEEP, the fact that the aquaculture folks in Connecticut
Are supportive, right, I
are
get that.
supportive of us
Right.
replenishing or something, what's the right word is, with the shellfish.
Enhancing the shellfish
Enhancing and
habitat.
creating new shellfish beds.
Yeah.
Somewhat of a trial program. I think they were very
Right,
interested in
right.
how this works.
And
Right.
a news release can be drafted so that there is a place where a comment might go from the Shellfish Commission, a comment might go from possibly the Country Club of Fairfield, or possibly from Blumenthal and Hines, or others. Depends on the environment at the moment. Where we are with that DEEP application, I think the information you're going to try to get, when do they intend to file, or is there even a deadline, or is there even a timeline for filing, or, you know, we'll get to it when we get to it, which I suspect is the case.
Yeah,
Right, but then we can plan accordingly if that's the
Yeah.
case.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, whatever that plan may be,
Right.
yeah.
They need to know that it's not just us that are watching.
So it sounds like it's the consensus of the group that we put together a communication about the dredging. Those of you commissioners on the phone, you agree?
Yes, yes,
I agree. This is Sam Cargill, I agree.
Great,
I think it's a good idea to communicate this.
yes, good. Okay, we'll ask Don to do that. Very good, thanks, Don.
You're welcome.
Harbor Master, any questions for the Harbor Master about his report, about other matters, or even that meeting?
I
Jack?
had to look something up in our rules and procedures. So the fellow who wants to upgrade from a medium-sized powerboat to a large sailboat, according to our rules, would take precedence in assignment of mooring, all other things being equal, versus somebody on the waiting list, including people asking for priority mooring.
Correct.
So,
And I did speak, he just literally called me this morning, and I was at the club this morning to speak with them. And I should note that this has been a great first year, having Pequod involved. They've been a wonderful partner for us in the harbor, providing support when I needed backup, and just the way they've been dealing with the moorings, with any issues that come up, alerting me to potential issues. And so we spoke about it, you know, who we could shuffle, who might be able to be moved, how we can do it, what his current mooring will hold weight-wise. He's in the Levy Smith area, so there's certain length issues because the helix pathway is behind it, certain ledge issues. You can't just put any boat, as you know, anywhere you want to because of currents, of bottom conditions, of length. So, and we can't just move everything every year. We have to stay within a certain space. So it's complicated, but we're looking at it already. But you're correct, someone who wants to upgrade their size does take priority over
Anybody on the waiting list.
anyone on the waiting list.
Including a littoral rights person?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's what it says.
interesting.
Because they're on the waiting list. And so
Right,
It
right.
doesn't literally say that, but they're on the waiting list.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Harbor Master. Moving right along, Lower Wharf, Mr. Stedman.
Oh, I have one more thing to add.
Yeah.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
That's all right.
There was a question last time, or someone brought up about the flags that had been placed by
Oh,
the
thank
Lower Wharf. And it turns out, I saw a picture online, William Kinney did them. Bill, as you may know, is a soil scientist here in Fairfield, has a business in Fairfield. The wetland soil scientist, he's very good in his field. So I called him up to ask him, because I've had him on some professional projects as well. And he said Race Engineering sent him out there doing that. And it was his understanding it was for the Lower Wharf project, and that's what's going on. A lot of people were concerned, and some folks had called him, why do you have flags out there? What are you doing? What are the property owners doing? And he said, no, it's just something he did for them. So that's the answer.
Great. Thank you. Any questions for the?
Sorry. I'm done now.
Jeff?
I was just going to say that Race is underway preparing the materials to submit for the approval to replace the piers and do the work on the wall. I did have a conversation with the Connecticut Port Authority project manager who agreed, and he was going to check with their finance department to see how they would do this, but they've asked us to return the unused grant for the dredging part of the project that we can't do anymore, minus our expenses that were reasonably incurred, to try to get that project done. So he agrees that there needs to be a formal request from the Port Authority for the return of that grant, and he was working on that.
Can I ask you a question? I just thought of this. We're talking about the dredging. Do we have to coordinate, I would assume, the removal of the fishing pier with the dredging so that it's out, the dredging will occur, and then it goes back in so we can dredge? Or how does that?
We don't know when we're going to be able to put in the new pier. You're talking about the Lower Wharf, because we don't have the funds to do that now. So our issue is we have a cost estimate that Race prepared, an opinion of probable cost, but it's a significant amount for the two piers and the wall. So once we get the approvals to replace all of this, then we're going to have to make a decision about do we do all the work, do we sequence it, and where do we get the money from? And the significant, we discussed it at the last meeting, is that I think we can have a reasonable expectation that the Port Authority will provide a grant for doing this, but there's going to be a 20% cost share. And where do we get those funds? So I think that if we were to, so I don't know what the timing is, Brian, but I don't think we want to be doing the work at the same time as the Corps dredge is working on the sandbar.
But I think Brian's question was, assuming that dredging, the sandbar happens first, is the pier going to be in the way of the dredging?
Right. And we need the fishing pier. Do we need to take that out for the?
I can answer a couple.
Devin, please.
Questions.
Yeah.
First on the flags, that was, not only were there questions, people took the flags out. So when I went to go meet the surveyor last week, I went down, all the flags were gone.
Yeah.
So I panicked, called Bill, I said, Bill, can you come back down here because all the flags are gone? So, we got that sorted. So the survey's done, the wetlands were flagged, the flags were picked back up afterwards. What about that again? I'll pass this around. This kind of addressed your question, Brian. If you see there, the federal channel limit is shown there on the off the Lower Wharf pier. And it's further off the pier than you would imagine. Basically, when boats are coming and going in the harbor right now, they're probably traveling. The center of the channel is essentially the far western edge of the channel. It's based on the current alignment of of where the channel is. Because we've never dredged, in my whole history of 20 plus years here, we've never dredged the full channel width. We've always cut back, I think 75 feet for the 100-foot channel.
Cut back from the east side.
From the east side.
Dredge to the fullest
Yeah.
boundary of the west side.
Correct. So my point is, it's not the western limit is not as close to that fishing pier as you would think.
You know, it's nowhere, if you look nowhere near, if you look at that, yeah.
So sure, both construction projects couldn't be going on simultaneously, but the construction, if the pier was properly constructed, recognizing the dredge limits, there's no reason it couldn't be done prior. So we've done our site investigations, we've looked at the walls, we've looked at the caps, we've looked at the wharf. The wharf is in tough shape. The piles are getting eaten by worms, there's a lot of hollows in the piles. It should be addressed. Funding aside or schedule aside, there's a safety component if it's people are still allowed on it. So that's something that should maybe be considered in timing. So that structure is nothing special. So our last permitting, it's currently an L-shaped structure. You walk out the walkway and it only goes to the right. And you can see derelict piles or former piles to the north. It used to be a T-shaped structure. When we got the permits, I want to say it was 10 or 12 years ago initially, we re-permitted the T-shaped structure. So now the question will be whether we ask for everything and tailor it back as funding or preference may allow. Usually that's a decent strategy or a good strategy because you say, okay, yeah, we can get the most and then whittle it away. Something as high profile as this is if you do that northern leg of the T-head, does that become a sticking point if there's no intention of actually building it. So I probably will need a little guidance from your team here, and I'm happy to do it in whatever way we want to engage in this, because there is some strategy and tactics in how you apply for these permits. So there's the ask for everything because we can whittle it back, or there's ask for what's likely just so we're not carrying parts of the project that may cause angst that may not ever get built. So any questions on the pier component of that?
This is what you're talking about.
That's what I'm talking about, yeah.
Sorry.
Someone suggested at I guess our meeting with the town officials when we were talking about the grant, that one of the reasons to ask for everything is that if sometime in 20 years somebody decides they want to complete the project, it's much easier if we ask for everything now than if we just ask for part of it now.
It's nice to have the precedent. The one thing I'll say, and I'll use this exact project as an example, because this project had a number of components. We had a public town sailing dock that was going to be located in that little notch. That became like we were going to build a baby seal clubbing plant. Powered by coal.
Sounds great.
That's what we need.
It was not popular, let's just say
Yeah.
that. And it became a component of the project that we eventually just spooled off because we said, people don't want it. This isn't a fight. We want to keep fighting. I would wonder whether extending the current L-head pier to the north could face similar scrutiny. Again, it's been permitted in the past. The state's direction to us currently is that we can apply for this through certificate permission process, which limits the public participation. That said, this will still come back in front of your group.
Yep.
It'll still be open for comment, but in a less formal, structured way. So that's one question. Do we go for the T-head, go to the L-head?
Now, the original structure went out here.
Correct.
We removed that,
Yep.
anticipating that the community sailing dock would be there. And Devin, when you originally designed this project here,
Yeah.
there was also a floating dock along this side.
Yep.
There was going to be an assistance to the boat. That's what the neighbors objected to most, because that was something that hadn't been there in the past.
Yeah.
One of the issues that we removed that led to us to remove the community sailing float was I think you also tested the subsurface and found that there's ledge there, and that would add substantially to the cost of
As it
going
would,
to pilings.
as it would with the L head versus T head, because the rock ledge starts to go up towards the north.
That's the reason.
So our thought was the piles to the north may need to be drilled, and that's like a 10x multiplier on pile costs.
So just to be clear, especially for those folks who are listening on the phone, the existing piles that don't have any dock surface,
Yeah.
those are the ones, the question is, would we apply for a permit to build out over those piles?
That's exactly the question. The last authorization that we worked with the town on, we did authorize it that direction, so we had both. So a question at hand, because we've done our investigations, we're well into preparing the applications. Do you want us to apply for the T-head? Thinking that that's just more surface, more fishing, more access.
And you believe that those piles would have to be replaced, the ones that are unused, they would have to be replaced, and there's ledge underneath some of those piles. So that would
influence the cost.
If you apply for that, the full, am I correct, you can construct less than that
Correct,
without having to go back and getting it modified?
Yeah.
I don't think there's any downside, is there, to
The only downside is that became a sore point publicly, that it was, that it soured people on the project right out of the gate. And it would probably be neighbors who might say that, no, I haven't been looking at that structure for years now, I don't want to look at it.
Well, I would think another sore point would be if we do nothing and continue to have those old dilapidated.
Break off and fall.
Yeah.
Having been recently.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was going to say. Wouldn't there potentially be an inverse but equal sore point of not applying or just leaving it be?
Yeah, what I was going to say, we're bordering on safety concern of its continued operation, so.
Yeah.
It's something from my professional engineering perspective, something has to happen. Whether it's an L head or a T head is more of a operational, functional question that your group would need to weigh in on.
Brian, you had a question?
I had a question. If we can go back, you talked about safety in the wharves.
Yeah.
Are you referring to the existing fishing pier?
Yes.
Is it safe to let people out there now, or does this commission there? Do I have to be concerned that this should be closed because it's going to collapse? Because we can't have that. I mean, clearly that's very.
It is not in good shape. We didn't do any specific remaining road analysis on it.
I have a question related to that. I'm on that pier often, and over the years, I'm sure you've noticed it too if you travel on it, the flooring has given way in spots, and they have to replace it with sometimes plywood, sometimes other pieces of wood, and it's been a risk, and it gets kind of patched and bandaged periodically. So I think that one is a sign of the volume of people that are on there. It's enough that it literally wears holes through the floor. I've seen it. Dogs could fall through.
I'm more worried about if it's going to collapse. If you go out there, you sometimes have 4 or 5 fishermen.
Yeah.
And this time of year, you see it all the time on the weekends. I'd be concerned if we should close it. We have to close it now.
What is the material that might be used for the flooring for any new pier?
We need to know that.
We know.
Especially because it said.
We now know. The 20% that we're supposed to come up with is a real issue. And if the pier was condemned, there might be a much greater impetus for the town to help us because it'd be far more visible it's no longer being used. I think that this commission coming up with 20% is a real problem. And having it condemned, I think it would get the town's attention. Maybe they could come up with the funding to help us on the project.
And for pure safety purposes, now that we know that there's, we have to really, listen to our consultant. And if there's a problem with that, shouldn't be on. The last thing we need is collapse. You get people drowning. If it gets deep there, high tide.
Yeah.
You could that's not good. And should we be
It's in tough shape. I mean, it doesn't get loaded significantly. We're not driving vehicles on it, we don't have gatherings on it, so the risk is somewhat mitigated by its current usage, but I would remiss to say it's not the risk associated.
Is that not something the building department, though, should be involved with? Do you think that there is a risk that they would be the authority to determine if it should remain open or should be shut down?
Sam and Eric, as part of their survey, will be telling us about a report that they plan to take to the town's risk manager. And Sam and Eric, this may be something that, I don't know if it's actually on your report, but it sounds like it's something that should be on your report.
Well, why don't we just sort of jump into that conversation now, if that's okay, if you want to stick to the agenda, but
why not?
I mean, it's so germane to the conversation with regard to the responsibilities that we have. And the fact of the matter is that the notes will reflect the fact that we have gone to the town with our concerns with regard to risk management and risk control of the property. And I engaged Peter Ritchie, who is he's part of the HR department. There is no dedicated risk management department, but based on the conversations we've had, the town are approaching Assured Partners, their vendor who procures the insurance and provides risk management advice and consulting to the town to do a risk control report. But that also leads to our discussion about how do they do an engineering report about the pier itself, and is that something will they recommend that a marine engineer and someone like Grace be part of that? So I would suggest that would be part of any report that's done. Now, that is something that is documented, that we have approached the town, and it's something that we're looking to do. They're reaching out to their vendor. I don't have a response back. But as a follow-up to Peter Ritchie, I will follow up based on this meeting and our discussion here, because, look, biggest concern is what are the electrical sources there, what happens on the pier, what happens to people are jumping off the pier or swimming and doing certain things, right? Our response was to go to the town with it, and they have the resources to do it. Now, if the vendor comes back and says it's going to cost the town, then the town's paying for it. It's not going in our budget. That is something the town has to deal with from a risk financing perspective. They have to know about their cost of risk, and they have to know about their risk issues. So we'll do it from that perspective. But it's probably a good point that this is brought up about that as well, and we should document that. So this basically report, Kim, where we are on the discussions of the town. It's just it moves. It's glacial. It's not everybody's got 4 or 5 hats on in the town of Fairfield, and that's one of them. So they're engaged and they're aware, and the notes should reflect that. I mean, the meeting notes should reflect that. Okay. So you're confident that they know that now, or will know, that the pier's safety is questionable. Well, I'm going to bring that up. I mean, it was more of a macro conversation, but I think that, like I said, I jumped in now because that's just now all of a sudden I don't think I'm sleeping tonight. What happens if 20 or 30 kids jump on it and they're playing and it collapses? Who knows, right? Anything can happen.
I don't think it should just be in the notes in the meeting.
No, I want the.
It can be a line in the news release that we're talking about.
I mean, the thing is, it can easily get local. You have wedding pictures there all the time.
Yeah.
And what if a party?
Yeah, you're right. No, but I'm not saying.
That's
well, look.
That's alarming. I mean, what you shared, so not to overreact, but what you shared is alarming to me. So my question was going to be, is there standard practice of testing that for various loads? Like, what's the standard practice for testing a structure like that with loads to ensure that the integrity is such that it will withstand, 30 people in a wedding party?
Yeah.
A lake timber structure I've never seen that happen.
But should we do that? Should we implement a testing regimen so that we could be assured that we're not subjecting
No,
people?
I don't think it has, no, I think it probably should be looked at a little bit more closely in the eyes of, we did a cursory review of your overall structures. We did enough to look and say, all the bracing's broken off, there's splits that are 6 inches deep, and there's evidence of marine borer damage.
If I could just say one thing or a couple of things, just to
Go ahead, Sam.
Respond to what Jack's comment is, like putting it in the part of the, in the minutes is not our way of saying that we're done with it. It's just wanted to document the fact that we are doing this, and the fact of the matter is there is now much more of a sense of urgency here, and it's the town. The burden is on the town to make sure that we do this. Whatever the outcome is, the fact of the matter is we need to get them to do it. So I commit to the group that I will continue to follow up with them, and hopefully they will have some sort of response. So there you have it.
Yeah, I wasn't meaning to be critical. I was just saying that I thought that the communication that we make to the town should be crystal clear about, and only focus on this issue, because I agree with you. I think that this is a different character of risk than people jumping off the piers. This is the town's obligation to provide a safe environment for people along the water.
Right. Would you recommend? But so with that, I would recommend, and let me again talk to Peter Ritchie in the town and just say, the board meeting, the outcome was that there is a far more of a sense of urgency here, and we think this is a clear and present danger, and that Kim, you may want to draft a note to the town or the town attorney about our grave concern.
Yeah,
I'm not saying. I think that's what would be helpful. Actually, it should do that. Period. But I just, because we are going through our resources in the town and doing the best we can. But I think the fact of the matter is that you need to, or we need to have some sort of communication back to the town about our concern.
Right. And my question was only to be sure that we were specifically going to get to the town and tell them about our concern, okay. Brian?
Well, that burden's on me to go back and say, hey, this just based on the reports that we had tonight in our board meeting, this has taken on a whole new level of urgency, and this clear and present danger that we believe is something that must be addressed as soon as possible.
Yes. Brian?
Maybe we go one step further. Since we have Race here, we can inquire, do they recommend further, marine engineering by your group, or do you recommend a structural engineer? So we could say the next step, what should they do? Should we, Race, do further analysis? Yeah.
Sorry, I would say have the town engineer meet us there. We can show the concerns.
Yeah.
Just to tell them what they should do instead of just putting a flag up, telling them we already have a consultant very qualified who,
gravely concerned.
Don't just send an engineer. You need a.
And I think you're left with a choice of you could shore up.
Well, this is Devin. This has clearly been elevated beyond working with the HR department to get a vendor to come out and do a risk control report. This has taken on so much more gravitas to the situation than getting that report.
Right.
I have a question.
Don?
When we're talking about replacing ultimately the pier, timber for the vertical parts, but what about the flooring? Is it presumed to be timber, or are there other stronger materials? I've been on similar piers in other parts of Cape Cod, and they're using synthetic materials that seem strong.
Usually it's pressure treated hardwood or plastics.
What are the strongest materials?
Or the most durable?
Yeah,
the flooring.
They're different questions.
Right.
The plastics are plastic, so they're going to last a long, long time. They're not necessarily the strongest. The hardwoods are a bit stronger. And if you get into real design optimization, we've done massive boardwalks where, because you can span further with the hardwood deck boards, you need less substructure, and then the economy favors using hardwood over plastics. on something as small as this, it's gonna be rounding errors, whatever you use. Some people hate the plastics, some people like the plastics.
I say it because this summer I spent some time in Chatham on Cape Cod. They have a commercial fishing pier that attracts lots of people to watch the commercial fishing boats come in and unload, and seals and everything. And the flooring, if that's the right word, it's not timber.
Synthetic, yeah.
It's synthetic.
Yeah.
And it gave me a very comfortable feeling. I think that should be considered for...
It should be, and that's down the line.
But we have Devin has asked us whether we want him to apply for a permit that covers all of the work on the whole pier or part of the pier.
I would.
Right?
Yes.
And you need to kind of know that now.
You want a motion?
No, I don't need that. I need to know that eventually, because the other bit is with respect to the seawall. And do we go get a permit for the full seawall and replace a section of it? The only section that looked really compromised is the kind of southern corner that they once pointed out to Long Island Sound. Again, I don't think you'd ever do a full project with full seawall replacement all the way around. I think it's a little bit heavy-handed. I think it would be very disruptive. You have some sinkholes, particularly up on the northern corner. Those could be addressed by lesser means than full seawall replacement. That said, with these old masonry walls, we don't have X-ray vision to actually know the structural integrity. We have to take test bits or do a little more analysis. I don't know that it's warranted. We're not seeing signs of failure up in that corner in minor sinkholes, which are not necessarily failures to a porous wall. Another is the load condition. We don't have vehicular traffic, boat storage, other household I think the project at hand is the concrete cap all around the perimeter is compromised. That should be replaced in total, I believe. The seawall, some section of it, to the south should be replaced. Whether we permit the full thing, just to give us some versatility, because the permit lifespan is 5 years. So what we see right now, when it may occur in 4.5 years, could be radically different. And then the P head versus the L head. The only risk is taking a little bit more through the permitting process. Could be more questions, could be more people saying it's a more disruptive or larger scale project.
So would you like us to deal with these issues this evening, or you want us to think about those?
No, not necessarily. I wasn't even on the agenda. I was just here to...
Okay, but we got to the lower work and you were here, and Jeff?
Was the $800,000, was that just the pier, or was that the...
No, that was everything.
That was everything, okay. I mean, I think the one alternative that we should consider is no pier at all, because the way the pier is being used, I mean, 50 years ago, big commercial boats used to tie up, or 100 years ago. That no longer happens. No boats that tie up to that. The way that pier is being used is by a small handful of fishermen who could fish just as easily from the seawall, and a bunch of kids who jump in the water who aren't supposed to be doing that. So I don't see the point of spending $800,000 to replace this when why don't we just get rid of it? I mean, we should consider it as an alternative. The other thing is, I just don't see this ever happening. The grant that we get from the port, they're saying we have to spend the money and then go to and try and get reimbursed.
Right.
I don't like the sound of that at all, because,
We've seen how that happens.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just to clarify that, the money is actually allocated by the bond commission. So there would be a contractual agreement between the town and the port authority for that money. So it's not a question if we spend it, we might get it back.
Okay.
They go before the bond commission to get a specific allocation of the funds. I don't think that there's a risk that we might not get the money back.
Okay.
But in any event, there would be a contractual agreement between the town and the state that they would recover the cost of the work.
But we would still have to spend probably the cost share first.
On the wall.
I'm sorry?
If we did this, we'd still have to do the portion of the project to wall itself.
The wall itself, right.
It's not a simple process. I mean,
Right.
there's financial agreements and, but I think we would be assured that they're not gonna renege once they issue the grant, and they go before the bond commission to get the money.
So,
One thing just, I do have to briefly.
Yes, Devin?
Because I wasn't on the agenda and I just threw a whole lot on your lap, but I do need some guidance because we're a team in this.
Right.
We're your consultants.
Right.
We don't just go in our black box and do our thing. More helpful than know what the public wants. Perhaps we get on the agenda for next month.
Sure.
And we come back with some photos and go through this in a little more clinical way. And then we'll prepare to, and the goal would be to say, okay, what are we permitting? What's the plan? Here's some recommendations, but there's tactics and strategy involved. Let's make sure we're all on board with those.
Great idea. We can do that next month. Jeff?
Devin, did you determine yet, we talked about getting this approval through a certificate of permission, but someone, maybe it was Colin Clark that said it might be approvable through a general permit.
I made the college try, gave a pitch to say, hey, all this stuff was permitted before. All this stuff fits under, could we go under the general permit? And he said, probably safer bet for COP. And in the reading of the general permit, it was kind of a stretch. And if there was going to be any opposition, I think we wouldn't be in a strong, I think the state would backtrack very quickly and say, no, we can't support that. So the COP is, I think, is strong. Still has a set timeline, still less public notification process. I think it's still a good place to be and could have the project on track faster. So that question was asked.
We've also reached out to the Sasquatch Association to keep them up to speed on what we're going, because they have a role in advisory role in what takes place.
Maybe it's appropriate that they be at the next meeting.
Yeah. We want to ask them to come to the next meeting.
Yeah.
But the more we keep people from getting surprised, I think it's
Absolutely.
a very positive project.
Absolutely.
But even the little example with the flags, everyone's going to get in their head that something sinister is going on. So if we can keep that from happening, that would be good.
Thank you for coming up today.
Thanks for coming.
Of course. Thank you all.
Don, did you have a thought?
Question for Jeff Warren.
Of course.
Your thought about removing the pier, not doing, would you then propose modifying the rest of it, the
wall?
What?
The wall itself?
The wall itself, so that people could fish from there, have a railing and.
Yeah, a railing would be nice, yeah.
Because I think.
Yeah.
As fishermen, there's a lot of people that love being there, whether they're fishing.
Oh, yeah.
You need,
pier is not necessary.
you need some place for people to have that view
I was not
safely.
even considering that as a possibility, but it's an idea we should really think about, because it's a derelict structure, at least half of it, maybe all of it, based on what we heard.
I mean, not only that, but it's only 75 feet wide, the channel, right? It'd give us another 10 feet.
Right, and, but I don't know that the deed restrictions say that you can't have anything higher than 3 feet. So I don't know that a 3-foot fence along that wall would.
Well, there's none down at Perry Green. There's nothing there, right?
Right.
So, I mean, it's not a safety thing. It would be either opposed or in favor, or people would like it, but.
I think.
Another complication.
I think the reality is, since we acquired Trev's Dock, people have been going down there, enjoying this most beautiful view on the coast here. And, if you take that away completely, you're going to hear about it. If you modify the wharf itself so that it can serve the same purpose as the dock, but not be the dock, that could fly.
Well, we'd save $200,000 because that's roughly the cost of the repairs.
Of the pier?
Yeah.
Oh, so the rest was $600,000 for the seawall?
The seawall is a much bigger expense, much bigger expense.
But still, I mean, with the marginal benefit of having that for a small group of fishermen versus
and
cast from
jumping kids.
And the other factors, the other safety factors. There's a host of, I think what we learned is a host of safety concerns
Right.
that we need to be cognizant of.
Yes.
The kids jumping and the fact that the wedding parties are going out there. We heard from an engineer that it might, I mean, it wasn't definitive, but that was enough to raise concern from my perspective.
About whether it should be open right now.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
The other thing is, if anything, that obscures your view for the people who are not out on the track.
True. Very
It would
true.
improve the view for the people who are just on the wharf.
Very true. Jeff, you were saying?
Another consideration, and I don't know how significant this is, but it's within the historic district. And so there may be regulations that have to do with removing something that's there now. I know
Well, nature will remove it eventually.
I don't think we
We
can
don't
touch
do
it
anything.
then, right?
Yeah.
We can't
I think we
touch
have to
that.
discuss it, and this came up when we had the meeting about the Perry Green bowl. What could be done there and what the character of the plan is.
Right, but that was about whether it had stone facing or
Yeah.
not. This is a structure that's gonna fall down, it's a
Yeah.
question of when.
Right.
It's worth talking about it with the historic commission.
Yeah.
It's,
Yeah.
Right.
If you remove something in a structure that's in disrepair, is that permitted under the historic district, or do you have an obligation to repair it?
And who's gonna
Right.
pay for it?
Right, then who's gonna pay for it?
Right.
Exactly. Well, look, we don't have to decide, we need to think about it. I mean, Devin is just asking us for guidance on seeking the permit at this point. I mean, who knows when the work is actually gonna get started? I mean, it would be nice not to apply for a permit for work that we have no intention of doing. On the other hand, at this point, we really don't know all the parameters, and I think we'll discuss, they'll have some recommendations in December, and we'll make up our minds or table it till January if we can't make up our minds. I don't know what else to suggest.
Can we get confirmation that it is indeed a historic structure, though? I think that would be, is that what you're gonna
It's
do?
in the historic district.
It's in the historic district.
So it's subject to oversight by, when you do something to it, to the historic district commission. We can find that out before the next meeting.
Hey, Eric? Eric Sunman, are you there? I
I'm
believe-
here. I'm here. Yes?
Are you're on the HDC, are you not?
No, the Harbor. No, I'm just Harbor Management Commission and president of the Southport Conservancy.
Okay, but nothing to do with the historic district?
No.
Oh, okay. Okay, well then we'll have to pursue other, thanks, Eric, other avenues to get that information, Bill. So we really did Lower Wharf. Any more questions, thoughts about Lower Wharf for tonight?
I have a lot of questions.
Sure. Sand management, Jeff, I mean, we sort of went over our meeting, but anything else?
Betty is telling us what we should do. No, I'm not saying that in a negative way. The only thing that Brian mentioned in his report, that the two different aspects of the dredging project, which is the removal of the sand at the sand spit, and also removal of sediment from the channel itself as it goes out into Long Island Sound. But there's a distinction between the different types of material, and it would require different equipment to do those two jobs. So we've been proceeding with the Corps of Engineers' own dredge to remove the sand from the sand spit. If the material is to be removed from the harbor, that's a different set of equipment that would have to be mechanically dredged with a bucket, and the Corps would have to put that out to bid for a contractor to do it, and which is going to take a period of time. So it's for those reasons that we talked about moving ahead with the project that we see the most likelihood of success in the near term, and deal with the contractor and the outer, and plus we need to get
communication
approval to place that material in Long Island Sound, because it's fine grained material, and that would require the toxicity tests that cost a lot of money. So we'll move ahead with the sand part of it first.
We were told that we couldn't even schedule the testing until sometime next spring. I mean, the testing wouldn't be done in spring, we would get on somebody's schedule next spring. So it would probably add at least a year and a half to the project. So we took a rain check on and said, we'll proceed with the immediate needs of dredging and work on the channel in the future. Any questions?
Okay. Mooring Committee, Jack?
Mooring Committee met on November 8th, and aside from the report from the harbor master, there was a brief discussion about the waiting list and an acknowledgement that there is now one person asserting riparian rights priority. And as we discussed earlier, we have a current permit holder who is asking for a reassignment based on the size of the new vessel. That person would take precedence over that person. He's got the priority mooring position. At the moment, the harbor master reported there are no known vacancies for the coming season, but it's early. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions about Mooring Committee business? Okay, plan update. The plan update committee met a couple of weeks ago. We had 2 items on our agenda. One was to, in view of the Cohen decision, whether or not we wanted to load up the plan with things that we thought might possibly be issues for us in the future, and we decided that we would proceed not throwing a laundry list of stuff at the plan, but simply to continue to be sure that we were being good stewards and taking the environmental considerations and the beneficial use and safe use of the harbor into account as we updated the plan, which is pretty much the way we had been headed in any event. Because if you'll recall, Cohen said if you have an item that's not in the plan, then you, Harbor Management Commission, don't have the authority to tell DEEP what to do when a DEEP permit about such an issue comes before you. So we decided to proceed as we had been proceeding. The second item on our agenda was to get the narration project back into our focus. We had a couple of members of the committee who were going to assess whether or not we could find a professional to narrate Jeff's wonderful presentation, Southport, past, present, and future, and we will be meeting again in the end of November to kind of take a look at what, if anything, vis-a-vis professionals we have come up with, and to consider our next steps with the plan update, which I think we're pretty much at the point where we can begin to actually have an update and move beyond the public hearing and perhaps an RTM visit. Don?
One additional update just today. We reached out to Jackie Bertolini and to Jen Carpenter in the First Select Woman's office, because we were aware that the town was in the process of updating the overall town website. And indeed, that is in motion now. And we were told by email today from Jackie that sometime in January or early winter, commissions like ourselves will attend some kind of an orientation to understand what this new website will look like. And the thing that's important here is that traditionally we have been putting on our website PowerPoint presentations, wonderful documents that Jeff has created and others perhaps, rich with information and text and visuals. But PowerPoint presentations are designed to be presented by someone like Jeff in a room like this, and they're not designed necessarily to be optimally seen on a website. Attention span is continuously fragmented today. The town recognizes that that's a problem for us and all the other commissions. In the future, I think we'll be seeing more animated presentations. They will not be a traditional PowerPoint. They might be some kind of a video animated presentation that will take people through it in less time and be something that you watch and not read all the way through. So I think as we look at that wonderful deck that Jeff put together on Southport yesterday, today, and tomorrow, I think we might look at that being the document that informs totally a next phase of communication, using that as the basis, but taking it into a different format that harmonizes with our new website and with the type of people that are coming to it for information.
Great, yeah, hopefully that's very exciting.
But a lot more costly to do that.
Not necessarily.
The animation?
Yeah, videos today are cheaper than ever. My phone makes videos for me for free.
But the narrative and the factual data, that's...
Well, we have
video, but
we have the hard work has been done. Jeff has put together basically the text and the visuals, making that come alive. I mean, it's not that much. I mean, there are steps involved, and it has to be done correctly, but it's not necessarily a very expensive process.
the voiceover and that sort of thing, you wouldn't have?
Correct.
So there'd be no additional cost to it?
I didn't say no additional cost. I'm saying it's not dramatically additional. It is, I mean, if you go to websites for universities, for hospitals, for insurance companies, that's what you're seeing. This is what people expect. PowerPoint is for in a room. Video is for on a website.
Agreed. Do they have a budget for that? Like whose budget, like who would pay for that?
Probably we would.
Probably we would. But we have a massive task in front of us. When we get done with the plan update, we have to go to the RTM and we have to hold a public meeting. And I don't think we can just show up and say, hi guys, we're the Harbor Management Commission. We have to have some pre-teaching, if you will, about who we are and what we do. And that was always the intention of narrating Jeff's presentation. Especially when we started this effort, it was the middle of COVID, and you couldn't get anybody together, and you couldn't have a meeting, a public meeting, and invite people to learn about the Harbor Management Commission. So I don't think that, given the fact that we're doing things on the phone and we're doing things remotely still today, having that opportunity to do it on our website is very important for our efforts to move the plan forward into to where it needs to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This document is wonderful. You know, people like ourselves that are very interested in these things will take the time to read through a 36-page document. But if you were just to present it, if you know the best presenter in the world would need a half an hour to present this. We don't have a half an hour with our audience.
Yeah, I think so I think what we need is a marketing campaign. So we're ambassadors of what we do.
Right.
The best ambassador right here because they want him. But so I think to me, so I think that brings up a good point. If we're going to encounter these challenges through the various bodies,
right,
people don't even know we exist. I think what we need to do is put together a campaign with a strategy and tactics as an outreach to the community and our target audience about who we are and what we do. I think, to your point, that's one part of it. That's one. Yeah.
And that's what the narrating that presentation is intended to do, to begin to tell people who we are and what we do.
It's more than narrating. It's looking at it visually and audibly in a 2023 style.
Something moving, as opposed to static.
Just looking at slides.
Yeah,
exactly. What gives life to the slides are the narration and
exactly.
Just pictures.
Exactly.
Yeah, you have a skilled presenter who uses inflection, information, eye contact, interaction. That doesn't happen unless you have Jeff or somebody doing it.
Right. Right. Okay, any other questions, thoughts? Thank you. Lower Wharf Project Survey, Sam and Eric, I think we're done. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I've got nothing to add.
Okay, thank you. Good work. Deputy Harbor Master Stitch, Bill.
Yes, so prior to the last meeting, I circulated the roles and responsibilities that our committee came to agree upon. We had a couple technical issues or cyber issues, I guess. So that document has not yet been published or noticed on any of the sites. In spite of that, we do have 3 candidates that have been identified. I identified 2 of them, and I think Brian said he had 1. So I guess I need to contact my IT department. I tried to open up the document and get on my phone, which I couldn't. So the same document that we used I guess none of us could open it now for whatever reason. Maybe there was an expiration on it. I do not know, but I'll check with my IT department tomorrow, see if I can capture it. And then all we need to do is have you have got the link, I guess. Betty has the link. And so we don't have the link yet.
No, all I have is this here, the announcement. I don't have a description.
You don't have the document. Okay, so we need to, can anybody open up the document that was sent out? So it just expired, I guess.
It said that there was an issue with it.
Yeah.
It was corrupted,
It was corrupt, and that's why, it was stopped from being, it wouldn't allow me to open it.
You want a clean Word file, basically, is what you're looking for, right?
Of the job
Of
description.
the job description.
I have this here.
Did you have it
which is just
electronically?
the announcement.
That's just the announcement, yeah, because we came to agreement on the description. We made modifications to what
Do you
Brian.
want it electronically or just a hard copy?
I have it electronically.
Okay, so you
Yeah, Tim was able to provide me with
I
it.
just copied and
Yeah.
pasted, that was,
Couple
So
things.
it's electronic.
And nobody's been able to open up the document that we.
Yes, we just need a Word file
Yeah.
to Betty so that we.
So I'll consult with my IT department. They're pretty good. Hopefully we'll be able to access that, but we didn't make tons of changes, if I'm not mistaken. We kind of used the template that Brian sent, and then all of us came to agreement on the verbiage. We had the posting, which I sent to you. And so the goal at that point was to have the deadline being November 4. Obviously, November 4 has come and passed. I think I would move that we should probably make the deadline December 5, Monday, December 5, providing that we could come up with the job description that we need to publicize to the various sites. So I guess that would hinge upon me uncovering whether or not we could access that file. If not, we'll go back to the drawing board. Done a lot of heavy lifting because we used Brian's template and made just a couple of modifications. I think we all agreed upon that the roles and responsibilities of the deputy harbor master were in sync with the harbor master's roles and responsibilities. But if I'm not mistaken, this was a few months ago, we tweaked a few things. So I will follow up. Hopefully, we'll consult IT professional. It's pretty good. Get to the bottom of that, and then I would suggest that we circulate that through the link and make the deadline.
what, I don't know do you know what link?
So Betty, I thought was going to get a link for us so that when somebody clicked on the link, they'd go right to the
Job.
Right.
This announcement that I drafted and I sent to a few individuals, you're one of them, Kim, and sent it to you, CC'd. And at that time, I put all letters of interest and resumes supposed to be submitted to Betty Gabriel at the address below by 4:30 p.m. on Friday, December 2nd. No emails, submittals will be accepted. You want to change that to when, or what day, the 5th?
Well, I think we should go for the 5th, December 5, I think at this point, right? That's Monday, so we'll give a couple weeks if we get that knocked off by the end of this week. And then, so I think it should all be electronic.
Yeah, but Betty's asking about the link. So Betty is gonna take that announcement and do what? What do you want her to do with that?
Well, I thought we would have a link that would take it right to our website.
Yeah. This will be on your website. This is
Okay.
going to be on your, the news feed of your website. I can put it there.
Or to the Harbor Management Commission website.
That's what I'm talking about. It's going to be there first. And then there will be a link, that will take it to, interested parties, the job description. Click here if you want to see the job description, more detailed information. I'll fix all that. And then they can click here, and that's going to it's going to point them to the job description. I don't have the job description.
Right.
That's what he's giving.
That's what we're going to,
So once I have that, I'm going to put it on the website. I'm also going to send it to Jackie and Jen and ask them to put it out in Brenda's newsletter.
The first thing, not the job description, it'll have the same link to go to the job description.
Yes.
Right. And then we could go through other sites as well. We could send it to
But then you guys have to send it to the Post or the,
Right.
yeah.
And yacht clubs and.
Yeah.
So first up, we need to gain access, hopefully to that file that's corrupt. And so if we can't do that, then we'll.
Is it lengthy?
It's not, it's just that, with the Word
Can
document.
it just be retyped? Can you retype it and send it to me? Whatever's easier.
Yeah. Well, let me check with my
Okay.
IT.
Okay.
And then hopefully we could capture that, because it expired from all of our devices.
What format is this document that
It's
would?
The original one that Brian redlined was fine.
And that was a Word
Yeah.
document.
Yeah, and then it just got transferred to another
Yeah,
version of Word or something.
but I was able to transmit it, and you guys were able to see it then, yeah, you saw the changes. Then it's just, I don't know.
Right.
Whatever, it's beyond me. But anyway, so we'll get to the bottom of that, and hopefully get that wrapped up by the end of this week, so we could, establish the link, send it out, and then we'll give like a little over 2 weeks.
Great.
I thought December 5. In spite of that, we have 3 candidates.
Right, but that's even more, makes it even, you gotta treat everybody equally, so you
Yeah.
gotta be sure you've got it, you can't just kind of have
Publicly noted,
special.
yep.
You gotta let the world know that you're, yeah.
So we could go to the First Selectwoman's, the town website, the First Selectwoman's town update, which is bi-weekly.
It's great, yeah.
And then, do you want to circulate it through the media as well? Do you want to go to the patch? And
Did in the past. We
Okay.
tried.
We tried, yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
why
Didn't
not?
have to publish.
Okay.
I mean,
We'll
you got
cast a
nothing,
broad net.
yeah.
I'm looking at your notice, and it seems to have conflicting information because it says we ask each individual to submit a resume accompanied by a letter expressing the applicant's interest in the position, summarizing applicant's qualifications relevant to the position described below. And it says, please submit the requested information to, and it gives my email, but then it says no email submittals to be accepted.
Yeah, you mentioned that was it, somehow that was in there. But we want to do it electronically, we don't want to do it in
Yeah.
hard copy.
Right.
Yeah.
So we could skip, like, just strike the no email submittals. We'll send them, is it okay to send them to your email address, or?
But you just said no email submittals. What, tell me,
We'll strike the bottom, the
Get
bottom
rid of
strike, so
it.
it's only
Get
in
rid
an
of that.
email. Yeah, because that was, I guess, maybe historically, did you guys do hard copy? So for some reason that was in there, I didn't put that.
No.
hard copies were submitted to me.
Okay, so that was probably it, that was probably why that was in, but we don't want to do hard copies, do we? No. Yes, let's do it electronically. So
It's
maybe
probably
that's why it
better.
was in there. Yeah, let me know.
Mail
if
the
you
way
do
it
that. If you could access the document.
Okay, so it has, please submit the requested information to me, P. Gabriel, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And this is any questions relative to
Not gonna
this
happen.
role, they're gonna be
me-
directed to you.
Yeah, that'd be fine. And Brian too, right? Brian as well?
No,
Just to me, okay.
yeah, no, and
Just
then,
direct
You're
them
it.
to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm the one.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll strike the last line. We need to capture the document. As soon as we get that, we'll do the First Selectwoman's update, town website, and then we'll work through the various meetings.
great. Great.
Hopefully I'll be able to find the documents. Or my IT guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're gonna wanna get this out, soon, because
Yeah.
everyone's gonna be busy
By
with
the end of
the
the week,
holiday.
Yeah, holidays are
I'll-
coming,
I'll
yeah.
get it on. Great update.
Great, okay, thank you. Any questions? Okay, our budget request. Betty was a great help. We put together a budget request that she submitted to the finance people. Flat budget, no increase for next year. We put together a budget message, which is part of that process. And Sam Cargill has agreed to shepherd this through the process as he did last year. And hopefully that means that there'll be no need for us to appear before the RTM and various other people, because we're pretty much have told them that we're doing this coming year what we did last year. The budget was distributed.
Email.
Yeah, via email. So everybody has seen it. Does anybody have any questions?
No.
And you have the message too, did I send that?
I didn't see a message.
No, I just.
Okay, the message we'll send out tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's just a one-page description of, everyone will get the message tomorrow. Okay, any questions, any thoughts? Okay. I need to appoint a nominating committee because next month we have to vote on officers. Do we have anybody who would like to be on the nominating committee?
I'll continue on the nominating committee.
You're a trooper, Sam. Thank you.
Only
Eric?
because you told me to.
But you're a big boy now, Eric. Sam.
Exactly.
Eric, you've also done a great job. Would you like to continue?
You know, I would, yeah, I'm fine if there was someone else that would like to, just to, be different.
To get involved. Okay, is there any?
Wants to, I'm okay, but if you want to see if anyone else would like to, that's fine.
Does anybody want to work with Sam on being the nominating committee?
Not all at once.
Well, Sam, hearing no volunteers, perhaps you could get Eric as your consultant.
I nominate Eric to join the nominating committee.
Okay, so Eric, we're counting on your good nature to continue to be on the nominating committee and have a report for us next month.
All right. Thank you very much. Yes.
Thank you, Eric, very much. Okay, and one final bit of business here. We have to, next month as well, put together a meeting schedule as well as, and vote on our meeting schedule for next year, as well as the time that we will meet. Currently, we meet the third Tuesday of every month at 4:30. And Betty has put together a list of dates which don't seem to conflict with any holidays. And so that will be on our agenda for next month.
I received the town schedule of their holidays or closures, but usually it's pretty consistent with the Monday after.
Monday after.
That seems to be fine.
Okay, folks, so next month we'll be voting on officers, we'll be voting on meeting dates and times. It's up to us if we want to change meeting dates and or times, but we have to declare for the year next month what our meeting dates and times will be. So that will be on the agenda next month. Jeff?
Is there a spot for old business that I could say something before the meeting?
Of course.
Are we to that point yet?
We're actually at new business, yes. But you have some old business, so
New business and old business.
Go right ahead.
At the plan update meeting, we discussed a significant matter that affects the content of the plan, and that has to do with the authority of the Harbor Management Commission.
Correct.
And so we talked about this ongoing court case discussion that has to do specifically with Harbor Management Commission.
Could you move the microphone closer to Jeff, please?
Yeah, just did.
So we talked about this ongoing judicial review.
Just a second, Jeff. This is with reference to the Plan Update Committee. Jeff is describing our discussion of the Cohen matter. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
And so in anticipation of again gathering support for local harbor management, Don took a crack at putting together a one-page summary of this issue. But here there's been more developments in this case. So the appellate court decision in this matter was issued on October 18th, which was the last date of the Harbor Commission's meeting, and it upheld the Superior Court judge's ruling that a Harbor Management Commission only authority with respect to DEEP is with respect to a recommendation that's already spelled out ahead of time in the Harbor Management Plan. And the judge also ruled, interestingly, the Superior Court judge, that a commission has no authority to even review and make comments on DEEP applications. So the appellate court upheld the Superior Court judge's decision on October 18th, and then subsequent to that, the town of Greenwich and at the direction of the Harbor Management Commission supported this, has filed a petition with the Connecticut Supreme Court to take up the review of the appellate court decision. And that could take 2 or 3 months before the Supreme Court determines whether it will even take up the case. Now, the DEEP has also submitted a document to the Supreme Court, of course, objecting to the Supreme Court taking up the case. But I thought I might read the last paragraph from the town of Greenwich's submittal. It says, local control is, in fact, the cornerstone of the Harbor Management Act. The appellate court's decision essentially takes away this local control by imposing a standard on harbor management commissions that is impossible to meet. It would require a group of volunteers serving on a commission to anticipate and foresee every type of application and situation that may arise, and to include a recommendation for or against it in the plan. It also mandates a level of specificity in harbor management plans that does not exist in the text of the statute. If the appellate court's decision on this issue is allowed to stand, the statutory right of every harbor management commission in the state to participate in and influence the state's regulatory decisions will have very little meaning. unless harbor management plans are drafted with a level of detail that is simply impractical. And there's others, I think, very well articulated statements in this, but we also have to anticipate that the Supreme Court may not even take this up, and then what do we do? We have no authority to influence state decisions, and that then is where this one-page summary of the issue is of most benefit, because we need to reach out to Fairfield's legislators to address this. But I agree, it's simply impractical and unreasonable to think that a plan can have a predetermined answer to every issue that may arise. And to try to do that is essentially giving in to something that, in my opinion, is dumb.
Right.
And the interesting, I'm sorry, Donald, just one more thing. The interesting thing about this is that DEEP is taking a position in this court case which is contrary to which it approved itself in the Greenwich Harbor Management Plan. And of course, they're doing that to defend their issuance of the dock permit. And also, not as directly, but also relevant, is that the appellate court spent a lot of time making a statement that a property owner can apply for a dock even though the dock doesn't attach to his or her property. And of course, that's relevant to the Kenzie Point situation. So anyway, I just bring that up and
relative to this, what is the name, I forget, of the lobbying organization for all the Connecticut Harbor Management?
Well, it's not a formal lobbying, but a volunteer, the Connecticut Harbor Management Association.
And they're the people that would work with legislators to come up with new legislation?
We never have done that. We shared information among the harbor commissions, but it would be up to the individual commissions to approach their own legislators with the benefit of the information that the association could disseminate.
But wasn't there some early draft legislation?
Oh, yes, we did. We already did that.
Okay.
We already prepared an early draft.
But then Jeff and I met with Kristen McCarthy-Vahey, and we contacted Jennifer Leeper and Senator Huang, and they were all interested in talking with us, but nobody about legislative remedies, but the courts, the decision hadn't run through all the courts yet,
so the legislative remedy aspect of this is kind of on the back burner until the court process is finalized?
Right.
That could be very soon.
Right, it could be very soon. The Supreme Court decides not to accept the petition for appeal.
And at that point in time, would harbor management commissions like ourselves and others bring in some real lobbyists to real legislative work?
I have no idea. I've only been in touch with them very generally once by email.
I think that's something we have to consider, how to deal with this.
We have the right to petition, of course.
Right, that's a good point.
I mean, but, there's a way to do it and a way not to do it.
Right.
Our harbor management plan had language back in 1995 that talked about the fact that our authority was.
Well, there's a good example, I think, that we've used in some of the background information, the Exide situation. Right. Because we didn't have in the plan a specific recommendation as to how that remediation project should take place. But we had recommendations about protecting water quality and the quality of life in the neighborhoods and fish and wildlife habitat. So when the Exide attorney stood in front of the high school auditorium and said no local approvals are needed for our project, but we're going to tell you we're going to make sure you know what we're going to do, the Harbor Commission said, well, that's not correct because we have a harbor management plan and we have to review it for impacts on the harbor. But we didn't say that we had a recommendation as to how the Exide remediation project should be undertaken. It was that we would apply the policies on a case-by-case basis, and that's I think that's an important. We don't want to lose that.
Right.
Otherwise, you relegate, and this is what the court has done. You relegate the Harbor Commission's comments to just regular public comments. No different than anybody else.
And why is it just harbor commissions that are in that position versus state agencies? I mean, where do you draw? If this is going to be the new thing, then you just completely remove local authority, right?
30G.
What is the status of getting that draft document finalized and giving it to our lawmakers so that they're just aware of what's perking up in the system?
We have this petition from the town of Greenwich, so we can maybe complete and finalize what you did, Don, and send it to people.
The key thing is that what Kristen specified she wanted was a one-page.
Yes.
Right,
That's an attachment,
right,
not anything but that,
Right,
quick talking point.
right.
which has been created. So when do we get that package to our lawmakers?
Well, I think we want to find out first if the Supreme Court accepts the appeal.
Then that would change one sentence or two in the,
Right, you can write it in.
in the overview.
But that also, if it accepts the appeal, then there's the opportunity for individual towns to join.
Amicus brief,
Yes,
yeah.
how you call that.
And there'd be tons of them, I would hope.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, see, it just says that, and I don't mean to keep reading this, it would be impossible to anticipate every potential scenario that may arise within its harbors. And if every potential scenario regarding docks and other applications is not anticipated and noted in the plan, the Harbor Management Commission can have no further input in DEEP's regulatory decisions other than what was explicitly noted in the plan. The Commission's written finding and recommendations to DEEP concerning regulated activities, large or small, would be relegated to the public comment section of DEEP's record. And I think that's a good way to.
It is.
It's a very good way.
My recommendation would be, at such time when we know whether the Supreme Court is going to hear the case or not, that we revise our cover sheet accordingly and sit down and meet with all of our representatives, either individually, one by one, or in groups, but brief them face-to-face and leave behind a document binder that has that decision and others, so that they're informed, so that it's not, again, we're transparent about the issue. We use the process, not wait for every T to be crossed or I dotted.
Isn't there a substantial record also historically of the DEEP and predecessor, what was it, DEP, that's respecting the authority of the commissions in the past?
There's a long record of this, but it also is fair to say that there has been differences of opinion and interpretation of the statute concerning the recommendations made by the Harbor Management Commission. But when in the course of work on the Greenwich Harbor Management Plan, which was approved in 2017, this was discussed at length, and recognizing that there could be ambiguity, DEEP approved specific language of the sort that they're now objecting to. When DEEP approved in the Harbor Management Plan in Greenwich that it is a recommendation of the Harbor Management Commission pursuant to the plan and based on the policies of the plan that's binding, rather than now what they're going back on and reneging is saying it has to be a recommendation that was specified in the Harbor Management Plan.
Right.
So it's an interesting. Well, I mean, that's a wrong way to term maybe, but it's upsetting that it affects what we do in the plan, because it could also, and I can see an applicant saying this, invalidate even the commission's review of DEEP, because that's what the Superior Court judge said. There's no authority for the commission to even comment on DEEP applications. That would mean an applicant could simply say,
I'm going to build a dock at Kenzie Point, and then we don't have any. Yeah.
3 docks.
3 docks, 4 docks, exactly.
Well, that's going to happen.
Well, we know that. Yeah.
So it's the case that the signal point for when we might reach out to our legislators is when we know if the Supreme Court is going to hear this case or not. We're not going to wait for the Supreme Court to rule on it.
No.
That's another year.
No.
We're going to wait till they decide whether or not they want to rule it.
Right, because a lot of the persuasive material that we would give to our legislators presumably would also be part of a filing with the Supreme Court.
Right.
So it would all work together kind of nicely. Yeah.
Eventually, this could become, I would not put it in front of the news media, but this has the potential to be a news story.
This is very, that thinking, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm saying is, that's why you want to have lawmakers briefed on this stuff. You want them, you don't want them blindsided. We have to have our own standby statement for if and when that time comes and someone comes to you and says, well, are you real or not? We have to be prepared for that.
In the town of Greenwich's petition here, they refer to the legislative history of the Harbor Management Act. And some of you know Doc Gunther and the way he spoke. And he introduced the act. So as part of this, the Greenwich petition references the legislative history and says that the goal of the Harbor Management Act was to promote local control over local harbors as described by its chief proponent, that's Senator Gunther. And then they quote him by saying, what we're trying to do, and I think you know this, what we're trying to do is end bureaucracy, get down to the basic concept of planning and development of your harbor, and then put that down where it would be enforced and overviewed by the local community on an adopted plan that has gone through all these steps, and in that way get the bureaucracy, the HELL, out of the business of doing this and putting it into the local community itself. Now, Dietz' objection to this said that it's not necessary to go to the legislative history, that the statute is unambiguous, when they themselves agreed that it was ambiguous when we were doing the Greenwich plans. Well, but thank you for letting me.
I'm just saying that reporters from the Connecticut Post go through these dockets at the courts, they see these findings, and they may or may not decide, hey, there's possibly a story here.
I think it's a significant, because.
So we need to be ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me prolong the meeting to go on about this stuff.
I mean, local control is a hot button issue right now because of 830G.
Yeah.
And this is just on top of the top.
Absolutely, it's the cousin to 830G.
Yeah, right. Absolutely is. So, anybody else have new business? Is there anybody from the public who would like to comment on anything they've heard tonight or anything at all that has to do with the harbor management issues? Hearing no additional new business, no additional public comment, can I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Bill moves to adjourn.
I will second.
And Jack seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned until December 20. I look forward to seeing from you all then. Take care.